I'm Ayman Muhyiddin, live in the Gaza Strip, where the Viva Palestina Convoy arrived to a warm welcome, hoisting one of the organizers, the British parliamentarian George Galloway, to a hero's welcome here in Gaza.
More than 100 trucks from the Viva Palestina Convoy have finally rolled into the Gaza Strip. But what should have been a significant day has been marred by violence. In the last hours of the convoy's journey, clashes between Hamas loyalists and Egyptian troops left one Egyptian dead. Well, this was the scene as the convoy finally made its way through the Rafah crossing a month after leaving Europe. It was the end of a long journey marked by diplomatic tension and changes of route. For the latest, let's go live to Ayman Muhyiddin in Rafah on the Gaza side of the border. Ayman, over to you.
Well, Stephen, a short while ago, indeed, the Viva Palestina Convoy made its way into Gaza to a warm welcome, and we are now joined by Mr. George Galloway, one of the main organizers and architects of this particular convoy. Mr. Galloway, this is the third time Viva Palestina has made its way into Gaza. What message are you carrying this time to the people of Gaza and to the world?
Well, we're of course trying to bring humanitarian aid as much as we can carry, and it's the biggest convoy so far, so we're getting bigger. But of course it's a drop in the ocean. As long as this siege continues, no number of convoys is going to solve the problems here. You're based here, you know the suffering here, you know the shortages and hardships here. So we're not only trying to bring in aid, we're trying to show the world there's a siege. And my goodness, if there's anyone who doubted there was a siege on Gaza, they certainly aren't doubting it now after the events of the last 31 days with this convoy.
This was obviously a very difficult journey for this particular convoy, much longer than you anticipated. The criticism being leveled against the Egyptian government, is it fair in terms of what they're trying to achieve?
It's entirely fair and entirely avoidable. And moreover, I privately advised them the way to avoid it because I was determined to try and avoid the 27th of December being a confused date. It ought to have been the date where all eyes and all fingers were pointed at Israel, the criminal that killed 1,400 people in 22 days, most of them women and children and civilian people. I begged Egypt, don't have everybody pointing at you. Don't have everybody with their eyes on you instead of their eyes on Israel. If they had behaved sensibly, they would have said to their friends in America and their friends in Tel Aviv, they would have said, look, this is a very sensitive anniversary for us. You'll have to cut us some slack. You'll have to give us a bit of flexibility here, or we're going to end up being blamed for something that Israel did. And that's exactly what's happened.
Mr. Galloway, those that may be critical of this particular convoy will ask, why did you not try to come in through Israel, the main perpetrator of this siege? Why not try to break the siege through the Israeli side as opposed to the Egyptian side?
We will never set foot in Israel. We will never ask permission from Israel for anything. We will never recognize Israel as long as there is no Palestine, as long as the Palestinian people are scattered to the four corners of the earth as refugees, as long as Jerusalem is being monstrously ethnically cleansed, with settlements surrounding it, choking the very life and greatness out of it, as long as Gaza is under siege, as long as Palestinians are being assassinated and bombed from the air, as they have been over the last week or so, by the way, from both of the main political factions within Palestine. So it's not just Hamas people who are murdered by Israel in front of their wives and children. We will never recognize an Israel as long as such a situation exists for the Palestinians.
And finally, just one last question. You're obviously bringing a message to the people of Gaza. What message will you take from the people of Gaza to the outside world once you leave after 48 hours?
Well, I'm in favor of the unity of the Palestinian people. As I've said always, I'm not myself a supporter of Hamas. I was with Yasser Arafat since I was 21 years old, and I was at his bedside in Paris when he died. So my point is this. Only the Palestinian people have the right to choose their leadership. That was true when it was Arafat, and it's true now when the vote for are people that the West and Israel don't like. You can't choose other people's leaders. And I'm sure, going to leave here absolutely convinced that the Palestinians here will never be starved into surrender. Anyone who's counting on that, whether Israel or anybody else, and I mean anybody else, who's counting on that, is making a big mistake. They don't know this people if they think they can starve them into surrender. This Palestinian people, taught by Arafat, by the way, will never surrender.
Mr. Galloway, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to Gaza. Well, there you heard one of the main organizers of the event there, the British parliamentarian George Galloway, clearly expressing, the sentiments of many Palestinians who want to see an end to the Israeli-imposed siege. All of this comes on the heels of a very bitter day for Palestinians who clashed with Egyptian border guards that left one Egyptian soldier dead. For more on that, my colleague Tarek Baisley had this report.
Hundreds gathered on the Gazan side of the border with Egypt. The object had been to demonstrate against the delay of an aid convoy. That and Egypt's construction of an underground barrier to stop smuggling through cross-border tunnels. But the situation was soon out of control. Hundreds hurling rocks across the border at Egyptian guards. Hamas police fired shots to disperse the crowd. Gunfire was also heard from the Egyptian side. Dozens of Palestinians were wounded in the scuffles. One Egyptian border guard in this watchtower killed. 9 other guards were injured by stones.
According to the eyewitnesses, it was a civilian rally, it was a peaceful rally, and the shoot started from the Egyptian side while one of Hamas leaders was addressing the rally.
The border clashes will only add to the embarrassment of Egypt. It's been criticised for not doing enough to help those living in Gaza, accused by some of being too willing to cooperate with Israel in its 28-month blockade of the Strip.
I don't think any state can accept leaving its borders exposed or unwatched. We used to have an agreement over the crossing points in 2005, and as a result of the Palestinian internal conflict, it was suspended. We have lived up to our historical responsibility and we cannot abandon it. However, our national security rises above any other consideration.
The incident will further stress relations between Egypt and Hamas and serve to only raise tensions at what is a critical border crossing for the Palestinians. Tarek Baisley, Al Jazeera.
Well, Ayman, as you and I both know, Gaza has been blockaded for 28 months, and Egypt has been criticised, certainly in the Middle East, for cooperating with Israel. Can you tell us more about why Egypt is cooperating?
Well, Egypt is in a very difficult position from 2 different levels. If you look at from an official level, that means from a government-to-government level. The Egyptian government's policy has been to prevent the smuggling of any goods across the border between Egypt into Gaza. That Israel claims is often used, these tunnels are often used to smuggle weapons and sometimes fighters into the Gaza Strip. That is what Israel claims. Egypt is under pressure to try to put a halt to all of that smuggling. From a public perspective, the Egyptian government is not seen as doing enough to alleviate the suffering of fellow Arabs and fellow Muslims here in Gaza. And so certainly when you take a litmus test across both the Arab public as well as Palestinians, they want to see the Egyptian government open the border entirely, allowing both the free movement of people and goods in and out of the Gaza Strip. But the Egyptian government, a very close ally of the United States, obviously it has a peace treaty with Israel, is under pressure to try to curb that smuggling of goods and alleged weapons and try to keep that border open only consistent with international agreements that have been agreed to by Israel, the Europeans and Egypt and the Palestinians back in 2005 before Hamas came into power here in the Gaza Strip.
We'll leave it there. Ayman Mahuddin reporting for us live from the Rafah crossing, the Gaza side. Thanks, Ayman.